assume so. Right. So here we are again above South Pullu. Seems like eons ago since I was doing my acclimatisation stuff around here, but probably less than a week. But that's the way things are when you go into these things, and we've been on the go for just over 16 hours and 17 minutes. So when I was filming before, you might have picked up that Rajat was also filming me, so Rajat being sort of race director, etc. I think in part just to try and get me to hurry along and not faff around, because basically, you know, it's hard enough getting to the top of Cardunglar. You don't really want you to sit there forever and a day. So yeah, so we so that maybe wasn't quite the way I planned it. But just before I forget, and if I mentioned these before, so apologies for the repetition. So that's some of the toughest racing I've ever done. Now, whether or not it's the race, whether or not it's me, whether or not I've done something daft in prep or whatever. I mean, certainly before we got here, I don't think I have, because probably, you know, in the best shape we've been for quite some time. So anyway, but genuinely, between 20 and 30 kilometres, the legs were dead, and combine that with the fact that, and this is not new, and this almost certainly is my fault, because I know this can happen and therefore I need to do stuff about it when stuck on planes and in cars and all that kind of thing, is that the hip flexors, but in particular the psoas muscle, which is a bugger to try and stretch anyway, when you're sat in that sort of hunched over position for, you know, it just, as I'm getting old, it just sort of seizes up on you. So actually, or very early on, actually, I had a stitch, or well, what could be described as a stitch, but actually I know from bits of past experience that trying to manage it as a stitch isn't going to get you anywhere. So knew what that was. That was quite interesting, because, you know, medics saying, well, you know, it's too deep for us to do anything with it, which I knew they were going to say. VJ, who's the sort of local organiser, so it's his guys that go around and sort of do treks and things like that. But he's also a bit of an Eastern medicine man, and he uses this wooden dowel thing, which basically it doesn't pierce the skin, but it's far more painful than acupuncture has ever been. Anyway, he had a go. That didn't seem to, well, a little bit, if anything, because he sort of does stuff on your hands and all that kind of thing. So if nothing else, for a little while I didn't feel any pain in that area, because bloody hand was in agony. The only time I've had any respite, and I've I don't know if I've mentioned this previously, but sort of I've been trying to do more of my running. I found I'd slipped into a sort of bit of a bad habit when it came to sort of ibuprofen and painkillers. So, you know, a bit like Smarties. So I've cut all of them out, and actually for the most part that's been okay. The only issue here is that ibuprofen in particular is absolutely fantastic for nipping mild altitude sickness in the bud. You know, you'd be daft not to use it, kind of thing. And actually that seems to have worked for me so far. Worked for me last night. So I had some respite whilst that was doing its thing, but I don't really want to just use it willy-nilly and then when we get to whenever we get to Warrilar, I'm then sort of like timed out or whatever in terms of its use. So I might just have to, as I was before, sort of grin and bear it and just get on with it. The big downside is that it actually seems to be an awful lot worse when I run, which you might think is quite funny, because when does he run? Well, actually I do try and run, and I have done far more running in training this time, so it's quite, so I'm currently walking down to South Pullu, ideal running surfaces, so it's a bit frustrating at the moment in terms of what that means. Well, let's have another go later. So the plan now, get through to shortly 87k, the cut-off at South Pullu. Will be about 15-20 minutes inside that, keeping up my average so far, and then it is a bit extended for the 222 and 333 runners, so we've got until we've got the full 24 hours to get down to the 111 finish at the stupa. That'd be a bit daft, because that gives us something stupid like 7 hours or something, so probably not go nuts with it, but push on and try and gain some bigger time when it comes to cut-offs, etc. And then again, we're going to have to look again at what my plan is for the next stage, which essentially is sort of along a sort of flat valley bottom-ish, because originally I thought, oh yeah, I can run bits of that, can't I? Well, I won't be, well, I won't necessarily be doing that now, so we'll just have to see how that pans out, and then work through what on earth that means in the context of getting up Wirrila and all that kind of stuff. All still doable, but just means that obviously we need to be paying attention rather than sort of buggering about and then suddenly finding ourselves behind and going, oh shit, I've still got another 5,300 pass to get up and down, and get to the finish, etc. So we need to just put some thought to it. Anyway, so hopefully you can see down there, that's South Pullu. Maybe you can't. If you zoom, you will be able to get down. So I can see quite a few sort of cars there. So those will be the crews waiting to look after us for the next 24 and 48 hours, depending on which race you're in. Anyway, that's enough of that. You're probably bored of this one anyway, aren't you? I may even just hand this over to, so I've got a couple of local guys who are going to be helping me, so Stanson and RD, so I may well hand over the phone to them, one, or this camera over to them, one, maybe will stop me faffing around and actually concentrate on what I'm meant to be doing, discussed, and then secondly, actually maybe they'll just find stuff that I wouldn't normally be in a position to capture, so maybe give them another angle. Okay, bye bye.